Hello everyone, my name is Jack. I'll be commenting an Australian 7-point Highlander video today for you. Today we're going to be watching a game between Beau at the top of our screen with the Lotus Cobra playmat, play against Cameron on the bottom of our screen with the Haunted Dragon playmat? No, some kind of dragon playmat. Both of these guys fairly common to the Australian 7-point Highlander League, and for any of you that don't know what that is, it's a singleton format, meaning you can play a maximum of 1 times each card in your deck besides basic lands, and it is a 60 card format designed to be played one-on-one, with some cards being given points. Those are the more powerful cards in the format, so things like Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, and you can have a maximum of 7 points in your deck. The points list is controlled mostly in Australia, which is why it's called Australian 7-point Highlander. But it looks like we have both players keeping 7 cards here, both starting off on a polluted delta, cracking down to 19. And I can see Decklists in front of me, and so I have a fair idea of what these guys are playing. And Beau is looking like he is playing a 4-color, it's a bit of a spicy one. We have a lot of cards that say take an extra turn, but a lot of them have a big drawback. He leads on a Serum Visions here. Scries 2, I think that was Seville's Reclamation, and I didn't catch the second one, but both go to the bottom pretty quick. Fair sign he was looking for lands, but we do see at least 1 more land in his hand. So like I was saying, a lot of cards say take an extra turn, but some of them may say at the end of that turn you lose the game, various effects like that. So obviously half his deck is saying take extra turns, and the other half is finding ways to not die. And now we actually see a fairly early lead on this Soulfire Grandmaster as the card that Beau's played, giving Cameron the opportunity to have a look at it. And Cameron's deciding he's going to crack down to 19 as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Cameron here fetch out some kind of black source and go for a kill spell, maybe a Fatal Push, something like that. On the other side of the table, we have Cameron's deck. He's playing good old-fashioned Jund. A lot of value in his deck. We're topping out at cards like Titania, Questing Beast, things along those lines. So pretty low Jund, not like some fast accelerant Jund that we see in some other lists, but still some powerful Planeswalkers, powerful instants, and of course creatures. Now we do see Badlands fetched. I believe we are still in Beau's end step, and yeah, there we do see a Fatal Push. And a draw for Cameron. So far, pretty much how the Jund game plan is going here. If we could lead into something like a Grimflayer, Tarmogoyf, Dark Confidant, any of those 2 drops, that would be ideal. Unfortunately, we do miss. Hard to see Cameron's hand here, so don't know exactly what's in there. But we can see Beau has drawn his 3rd land. We're seeing Fatal Push, Brainstorm, I think a Braid. Oh, and that's one of the, I believe that's Fortune's End. Instant 3 mana. Red and 2 says take an extra turn. At the end of that turn you lose the game, but his hand doesn't really do a lot right now. If he casts Brainstorm on the end step and doesn't find a land, oh, that's the red-green god, I think it's called Clythos, does pretty much everything. In your first main phase you get to exile a card from your opponent's graveyard. If it is a creature, I believe you gain 2 life. If it is not a creature, they take 2 damage. But pretty good to get it down. I believe it needs Devotion to 7 to be turned on, and I believe if it is turned on it becomes a 4/5 or a 5/6. But so that's going to start the clock going. We do see Beau Brainstorm on the end step, a little bit risky. I'm not sure if he did find a land. Ooh, and it doesn't look like it. Okay, so he's picked up a couple of new cards here. We have a Swords to Plowshares, which will deal with the Clythos if it ever comes online. But not really the answer you're kind of looking for here. So I believe we've passed over to Cameron. Cameron is targeting something in Beau's graveyard by the look of it. Brainstorm. Brainstorm is gone, dealing 2 damage. Beau down to 17. And so like I said, Beau missing his land here. This is pretty scary. He knows the card that's still on top is also not a land. He has picked up another card that says take an extra turn. At the end of that turn, lose the game. Thoughtseize is going to be a bit tough for Beau here, I would imagine. So yeah, so the 2 cards on the left both say take an extra turn, lose the game at the end of that turn. We see an Angel's Grace second from the right that says this turn you cannot lose the game. It has split second. and we have a Braid, Fatal Push, Swords to Plowshares. This hand's kind of interesting. I don't think you want to take any of the cards that say take an extra turn. Don't really achieve a lot here. And then he has 3 removal spells, so taking 1 is kind of, but if we are worried about the Klithos, obviously it's indestructible, so Swords to Plowshares is probably one of the only ways Beau has of dealing with it in his deck. Wouldn't be surprised to see either Swords or Angel's Grace go here. Maybe a Braid if you have an artifact that you want to stick, but we will see what Cameron offers go with. He does take the Angel's Grace in the end. Okay, so Cameron down to 17 off of that Thoughtseize, and we will see play continue from here. Now things that Cameron's looking for here, in the face of these 3 removal spells, something like a Planeswalker could be really good. Obviously, Liliana of the Veil to start pressuring the hand is always great. But as far as other Planeswalkers go, we're talking things like Renin 6 or the other Liliana. Pernicious Deed, not the best. Beau's deck, pretty permanent light. But I'm sure it'll come up at some point and it may help out. So Beau draws another card. He knew it wasn't a land. Not much to do on his end, so just has to pass it back. Cameron remembers his trigger, decides to exile Angel's Grace. That's another 2 damage. And then moving on, so Cameron, 4 lands, has the opportunity to play a 5th land. All he has in his deck for 5 is Titania, I believe. Titania would be fine on this board, but not really the turn you want to do it. We do see a shock here. Blood Crypt comes in shocked. So maybe leaning towards that, or maybe we just have a 3 and a 2 that we're looking to play. He's thinking about it. 4 Blood Braid Elf is one of the... Oh, Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Okay. Limited All-Star. Needed to shock the Blood Crypt in to get the second red there, which is what we see. Exiles a card. Misty Rainforest, 2 damage. Still has a Swamp Up. If he has another hand disruption spell, that would be... Okay, Deathrite Shaman. That's going to eat one of the removal spells, depending on what Beau wants to cast here. A Braid, Swords to Plowshares. Doesn't have black, so can't Fatal Push. Okay, and yeah, we're seeing the Swords to Plowshares come up. Just doing a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't think 6 is 7. Alright, okay, yeah, they just have to rewind. Missed maybe that the Pernicious Deed. Yeah, we see Beau pointing at it. It's green-black, and all the other cards count here. So we will see a Fatal Push. He doesn't have... Yeah, okay, there we go. Managed to get there in the end. We see a Braid dealing 3 damage to the Deathrite Shaman. It goes to the graveyard, and we move on. Beau draws for the turn, really needs to find a land here, but even a land is kind of... I'm not sure that it's really unlocking much in his hand. He doesn't have a lot going on that's powerful. He wants to find something like a permanent that's going to let him stay alive through these 2 spells that say take an extra turn. But unfortunately, the Pernicious Deed does a lot to kind of counteract that. So we'll have to see. I don't know. Ways out of this for Beau. He probably needs to find another card like Brainstorm, which lets him turn some of these cards into his hand into other cards. We see Chandra go up. Maelstrom Pulse. That's another 2 damage. Beau down to 9 here. But so yeah, for Beau, the Brainstorm is still in the graveyard by the looks of it. There is a little bit of glare there, so it's hard to make out for sure. But something like a Snapcaster Mage coming off the top could help out. Okay, there we see the Bloodbraid Elf. Let's see what this cascades into. So we are counting it up now. It is 7, but Bloodbraid Elf still on the stack, so we can't Swords to Plowshares just yet. We got to go through the cascade. Yep. Ooh, Cling to Dust. Okay, this one, a bit of a doozy. Basically, you exile a card from a graveyard. It has flashback on it, and you can exile a card from a graveyard. If it is a creature, you gain 3. If it's not a creature, you draw a card. So we'll see, gets rid of the Serum Visions, draws a card, Bloodbraid Elf comes into play. I imagine in a second here we're going to be moving to attacks, and we might see that Swords to Plowshares take care of the god. Plays the land first, always good to be correct, and there we go. So, worth noting, Chandra getting pretty close here. The Pernicious Deed can actually be sacked for 0 just to get it off the table. I kind of like that play just because, you know, the indeed not really representing a lot here. I can't think of too much that Cameron... Oh, and we do actually see that play happen. Turns it off, Swords to Plowshares fizzles, Bloodbraid Elf still gets to come in. Put Beau down to 6. And I imagine we'll be passing it back here. Now, fetch land to get black can kill the Bloodbraid Elf, putting us pretty far away from the gods swinging in. That is black, but unfortunately do not have Revolt to trigger. Chandra is on 6, and we see the Chandra ulti is most likely lights out, and that's at 7. But even Chandra just being on the table without the ulti, probably still pretty good here. So Beau, under a lot of different angles of attack, I imagine what we'll have to see him do here is hope to... Oh, okay. So this one, quite interesting. I don't remember its full name, but it is a creature, and it can tap to end your turn. I believe it's called Obeka. Obeka, I believe it is, and it is a 3/4. So does block the Bloodbraid Elf, but Chandra can take care of it. There is very few ways for Beau to not be dead here, I think. I imagine pretty much any direction on Chandra is going to be good if we have a card in our hand that does anything. We see Chandra go down, yep, takes care of that Obeka. And a swing with the Bloodbraid Elf will bring Beau down to 1 here. Okay, we're still alive. Now there are a lot of lethal threats on the board, but okay. Titania post-combat, not perfect. I think if we'd played that one beforehand, we could have swung in with our god as well. But still fairly in command here. We have 2 fetch lands, so if a removal spell gets pointed at that Titania, we can make some 5/3s in response. However, leaving Beau on 1 is more than 0. We see Beau pass the turn here. Interesting. Angel's Grace no longer in Beau's deck, so I'm interested to see what he has here to try and get himself out of this one. So we see the god trigger on the stack. I believe we are targeting something in the graveyard, and the only question is what we are targeting. Okay, all right. So I believe this one is called Challenging End, or maybe it's Chance for Glory. But basically, it says end the turn. At the beginning of your next end step, you lose the game. It is an instant, so of course we're kind of time walking there. And yeah, Beau, too hard. He needed a way to draw more than 1 card a turn. Didn't really have it there, and so we see Cameron pick that game up. Now both these guys go onto the sideboard. In Beau's sideboard, we have an Aethergust, a Containment Priest, a Defense Grid, a Dovin's Veto, an Extract, a Fry, a Hide and Seek, a Mental Misstep, Mystical Dispute, Nihil Spellbomb, Red Elemental Blast, Thieving Skydiver, Thoughtseize, Tormod Script, Wear and Tear. Honestly, I don't like too much here. Obviously, Aethergust is going to be good. Putting red or green spells on the top or bottom of their libraries is good against a red or green deck. Don't think I would be bringing in too much else. Fry is a removal spell, but we just saw in that game how diverse Cameron's threats are, and they're all pretty grindy. Fry is obviously going to be better than something else if we can find something we do want to take out, but not the be-all, end-all, I wouldn't think. You could make arguments for bringing in something like Nihil Spellbomb, just in case. Cameron obviously does some things with the graveyard, but not everything. If you wanted to go the route of Thoughtseize, I guess I probably wouldn't blame you, but not something that I want to pick up versus Jund. And on Cameron's side, we have Abrade, Anger of the Gods, Ashiok Dreamender, Choke, Collector Oof, Duress, Fairy Macabre, Fiery Confluence, Force of Vigor, Nihil Spellbomb, Nullrod, Plague Engineer, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Veil of Summer. Okay, some good ones here. I think you can make an argument for Veil of Summer. We didn't see too much that targets out of Beau's deck, but it's fairly safe to assume that they are in there. Simply he's playing a blue-black deck, so at worst, Veil of Summer is probably going to cycle more often than not. And I think we can cut a lot of our creature removal. We did see 2 creatures out of Beau that game, actually. We saw Sofa Grandmaster, as well as the 3/4 that ends turns. I believe its name is Obeka. So maybe we don't want to cut all of the creature removal, but still, I think we're definitely bringing in something like Duress. Beau showed us that he did play with his graveyard slightly, I believe. It's fair to say that he probably has cards in there to recur a lot. But outside of things, like I would probably bring in a Braid for a little more flexibility over some of the other instants and sorceries that are kill spells in the deck. Having a Braid over, say, a Pyroclasm is probably good here. You could make an argument for Choke, but I think just seeing that game, Beau's mana looks pretty heavily tied up. We are trying to play 4 colors, so maybe you're not going to hit too many. Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast, I would probably lean on the side of not bringing in, but of course you can if you want to bring in Fairy Macabre or Nile Spellbomb. I think those are fairly reasonable as well. But it looks like both players have managed to come up with a setup that they are happy for game 2. And we are going to see Beau on the play again. So really, I guess what we're looking for from Beau is definitely more mana development, trying to get the engine wearing a little bit faster, and so we can kind of try and set up some of those extra turn cards to give us a little more fruit rather than just killing us on the next end step. We see Beau looking at a 1-land hand. We have a Dawn Charm, a Fatal Push. Oh, he does decide to keep. Okay. There's a Demonic Tutor all the way to the left. I don't know about this hand, because I think what you're probably going to find, we do draw another land. That's a good start. And the Soulfire again. Okay. So this Soulfire, for example, probably needs 5 or 6 mana before it really starts going, before it's just a 2/2 with lifelink. So running it out on turn 2, obviously it is fine. Using your mana every turn is a good idea. But it would be really good to get some value out of that second ability, which basically says pay 4 mana. 2 of them have to be blue or red. And the next spell you cast, instead of putting it in your graveyard, you put it back in your hand. But so we see a couple of interesting ones here in Beau's deck. So Dawn Charm, Fatal Push, Demonic Tutor. Relatively normal. Dawn Charm is a fog with a couple of other modes on it. A bit cool because it's white. And then we see Angel's Grace on the left, same card as in game 1. Split second, that lets us not die for a turn. And then I believe the last card is a 4-mana black spell called Stunning Reversal. And the next time you would lose the game this turn, instead draw 7 cards and your life total becomes 1. So definitely a way of Beau kind of crawling out of a hole. We saw if he had had that in the last game, we maybe could have put something together with those 7 fresh cards. But carrying on with this game, we finally see Cameron get his lands online. Abrupt Decay, that Soulfire, just not wanting to let it connect at all. Just wanting to use his mana every turn. And Beau does get stuck on 2 lands. Interesting choice there, whether to Demonic Tutor or not. It's hard because obviously you want the Demonic Tutor to find one of the combo pieces in your deck, but I also think you just need to get lands into play with what his hand currently looks like. And we see on the other side of the table Liliana of the Veil come down. A bit unfortunate. Beau obviously ready with the Fatal Push, does not interact with Liliana. We see he did pick up a Teferi Time Raveler for the turn, and I think if that was the draw, I really do like Demonic Tutoring for a land, because then obviously on this turn he could play that Teferi Time Raveler. He draws Ojutai's Command, I think. Ojutai's Command, exactly not what the doctor ordered for, and we do fire off Demonic Tutor. I can only imagine we're getting a land here, and it feels a little bad to have wasted a turn not making that land drop, but I guess hindsight definitely is 20/20, and it's a pretty close decision either way on that turn 3. So we see a Triome come in, so this will be his source of red for the game, I believe, and pass it back over to Liliana and co. So we did see Cameron board in Collector Oof. Not something I'd considered. I don't think Beau will have a lot of artifacts in his deck, but I guess it makes for good Liliana fodder, and we see a Toxic Deluge as well, and Ojutai's Command in the bin. Ojutai's Command, not the most impactful here, but definitely not the worst card. And we are building up close to 4 mana, so maybe could have found a use for it here, but going to move on with Ojutai's Command being the discard. Dark Confidant, a great pickup, but is most likely going to be met with that Fatal Push. If we have another 2-drop creature here, that's going to be pretty much perfect. We're going to see Cameron fetch, but we'll have to see what he ends up going with. But yeah, Cameron definitely in a great spot this game. Beau missing those lands and the Liliana coming down on time is really what the doctor ordered. You know, a little bit of pressure, managed to remove that early threat in the Soulfire, and just been very mana efficient every turn. We saw he didn't play anything on turn 1, but turn 2 used all his mana, turn 3 used all his mana, and now turn 4 it's looking like he's going to use all his mana for a Scavenging Ooze. Okay, pretty good. Like I said, Beau's deck plays slightly out of the graveyard. It's always good to have that covered rather than not have that covered. Didn't quite catch what Beau drew there. Was it a Thoughtseize? It could have been a Thoughtseize. Okay, it was an Eliminate. Honestly, pretty timely draw there. Manages to take care of the Liliana, which is definitely the biggest of the threat. Unfortunately, only 1 black on Beau's side, so he can't Fatal Push as well. Oh, we see Titania. Okay, Titania come down and knock Cameron down to 11, which is, you know, that could be a way for us to steal it. Unfortunately, Beau not playing any lightning bolts. But still, I imagine with a Scavenging Ooze out there, it will be a little harder for us to get those points across the line. But Liliana off the table, this is definitely what the doctor ordered. We see Scavenging Ooze and Bob come in, putting Beau down to 15. And Strip Mine is going to be brutal. Okay, we opt to go for Titania here. I definitely like considering just stripping Beau. We saw him, I guess we don't know he demonic tutored for a land, but we definitely saw him miss a land and then demonic tutor and play a land. So definitely a consideration. And if we do strip mine, and then when we find our 5th land for Titania, we can strip mine again. But on the other hand, just getting Titania on the battlefield here can actually make lethal next turn if we choose to crack this fetch land. Okay, Teferi comes down. Hard choice on what to bounce here. Opts to go for Dark Confidant. Maybe representing a sweeper is maybe Beau's only hope here, actually, because Beau being at 15, Titania can make 10, and then I think there's only there's 2 creatures for the Scavenging Ooze to eat, which would make 14. So if Cameron can actually get one of his creatures from his hand to the graveyard for the Scavenging Ooze to eat, that would deal the full 15. Beau's tapped out, so we'll have to see if we can make that a reality. But yeah, not the easiest decision on what to bounce with this Teferi Time Raveler. Cameron opting to search up Badlands. I kind of like getting a green here just so we can eat something now. Keeps our mana a little more free next turn, but Cameron reorganizing some lands. Has 4 green available. I imagine that strip mine should really start to put this game out of Beau's hands. Pretty hard to beat strip mine when we are missing land drops and not really utilizing all of our mana, especially against something like Titania, where that strip mine is not only killing a land, it's making a 5/3. Okay, we have Maelstrom Pulse to kill Teferi, and maybe just an attack here. Cameron considering all his options, deciding whether he wants to play Dark Confidant again or eat something with the Scoos. Just attacks in for 12, it looks like. Okay, yeah. Attacks in for 12. Puts Beau down to 3. Yeah, definitely maybe leaving a couple of points on the table here. I can understand wanting to leave up a Scavenging Ooze and also wanting to keep the Dark Confidant in our hand in case of a sweeper. But not strip mining is probably not something I would want to be doing here. I definitely want to be firing off this strip mine at some point, probably on this end step so that we can make another 5-3. But Cameron choosing to play it slow, doesn't want to tap either of those green either to eat one of the creatures with the Scavenging Ooze. But now we can see, I feel like we're giving Beau a lot of chances that he doesn't really need here. I want to be trying to close this out, and now we're not attacking with Titania for fear of maybe settle the wreckage? I'm not really sure what we're trying to play around here. And this is not a great attack, so I think with Beau at 3, there's probably lots of combinations of things like Snapcaster Mage, which just end up being pretty awful here. Buying Beau another turn, definitely, but maybe worse than that. Okay, Dawn Charm, Fog, no real difference. We're going to see that attacking with 2 or 3 things didn't make too much difference here. And we're going to see how Cameron wants to continue. Okay, he's just passing the turn back, so we do have heaps of mana here to Scavenging Ooze, but I really do think we should be strip mining. Beau manages to find another land, just building up those resources. And like I was saying earlier, this is the part of the game that we got to last game, but Beau just had significantly less mana. And now with a card like Stunning Reversal in his hand, we could actually see this one get away from Cameron. Ooh, and we saw Beau draw Lightning Helix. That could actually be pretty good here if Cameron chooses to not attack with everything. Ooh. Okay, Bloodbraid, I imagine, is going to put that out of the table. We're going to see an opposition agent. This one, an Australian 7-point Highlander All-Star, but I can't imagine it's going to do too much here. Oh, okay, so Cameron's choosing to just attack with the Bloodbraid Elf and the Scavenging Ooze. This is going to get pretty messy with Lightning Helix. So Beau he has a couple of choices. Obviously, the Fortune's End would, the Stunning Reversal, would draw 7 cards if he decided to cast it here. But maybe he just wants to fire off the Lightning Helix, because that actually buys a turn on the Bloodbraid Elf, because he's on 3, and there is only 2 creatures in graveyards currently, so this would make that 3 creatures. It would make the Scavenging Ooze into a 5/5, and that would put Beau back down to 1, and I think that's the play that we're going for here. We've got Lightning Helix on the Bloodbraid Elf, and yeah, definitely would have just liked an attack with one of the elementals. I definitely think strip mining a land is probably the play at some point, but Cameron opting to take this very conservative path, trying to play around sweepers, trying to play around things like settle the wreckage as well, and just says take the damage here. Doesn't opt to eat anything with the Scoos, and we see Beau make another land drop, and didn't quite catch what he drew, but the Stunning Reversal definitely still in hand. So, okay, did we... Oh, we drew Seville's Reclamation? Okay, this one gets cards back from graveyard with CMC 3 or less. Unfortunately, it does cost 3, which would put us out of range of our Stunning Reversal. But it looks like Beau is going to cast it now into the face of the Scavenging Ooze. This is pretty bold. I'm not sure if this one's going to get through, but I definitely like eating the Soulfire Grandmaster once we target it. And we see Cameron make the play. Gains a life. Scoos becomes a 3/3, making it a lethal attacker on its own. And we see Beau pass it back. Cameron draws for the turn, and I imagine that we are going to see an attack, and is it an Angel's Grace out of Beau's hand? Okay, 3 attackers come in, much more than lethal, and yep, Beau casts Angel's Grace. So this says your life total can't be reduced past 1. So we're going to see Beau fall down to 1 here. And we're going to see if Cameron opts to do anything else on his turn. But Beau, with the stunning reversal, I mean, this game is not over. Okay, we see Cameron now opting to eat the Seville's Reclamation. That's a heads-up play, not allowing it to flash back. And we see him deploy the Deathrite Shaman. A little interesting that before he opted to play around a sweeper or not go all in, and he still has the Dark Confidant in hand, but willing to deploy the Deathrite Shaman, I guess as a second way to give lethal. So he can attack, and if Beau comes up with a spell that says take no damage, then he can use the Deathrite Shaman to deal the last point. We see Cameron on Beau's end step choose to eat 3 instants and sorceries out of Beau's graveyard, and I imagine we are going to see an attack here and a stunning reversal. Duress. Okay, this is pretty unfortunate, but we are going to cast stunning reversal, and now I imagine Cameron will just not attack or use the Deathrite Shaman right now to try and end the game. So let's see what happens here. Duress gets rid of Gideon of the Trials. And yep, Cameron is going to say, okay, the stunning reversal resolves. Doesn't want to use the Deathrite Shaman, and maybe we will Deathrite Shaman in Beau's upkeep. He says go, allows Beau to draw a card, and Beau shows him a land, which is probably going to be it, I imagine. Yeah, that's Beau picking up the cards there. So we see 2-0 victory to Cameron there. Did let Beau get a couple more turns in, but perfectly timed Duress off the top to make sure that we did not let him see those extra 7 cards. Beau's actually giving the chance to show us, oh, this is the 7 I would have drawn. I think we've got Mental Misstep, Snapcaster Mage in there, but another great game. Thanks for joining me.